Chapter 16, Touring Without Her. He finished the report in the early hours of the administrative morning. Not the approximate hours, not the hours that had the quality of early. There were no such hours in Turing. There was only the light that was always what it was, and the city that managed itself without reference to anything as provisional as time of day. But he had been writing since he returned from the blocks, and at some point the writing was done, and the point at which it was done felt like early morning in the way that the completion of long work sometimes felt like morning regardless of the actual hour. He put down his pen. He looked at the pages. They were many, more than he'd intended when he started, or not more than he'd intended because he hadn't intended a specific number. He'd intended to write until the true thing was fully said, and it had taken this many pages for the true thing to be fully said. He counted them without meaning to, the habit of a man who had been filing things for decades. 41 pages. He thought about Vex's walls, about the thoughts that had outgrown their container and covered every available surface. 41 pages was modest by those standards. 41 pages was a beginning. He stacked the pages and held them for a moment, the physical weight of them, the paper he'd asked for specifically that had been provided with faint confusion. Then he put them in the inside pocket of his jacket, which was not quite large enough for them, and produced a visible bulk that he straightened over without entirely solving. He went to the window. The 3 identical trees stood in their triangular formation. The ventilation current moved through them. The courtyard was empty, the early hours, if they existed, had that much. He thought about a different courtyard, about painted walls and accumulated colour, and a beetle rendered with patient accuracy by a boy who had been taught to look at things until he understood them. He thought about sitting on a ledge and eating warm bread, and not saying the things that didn't need saying. He thought about a woman walking back into the city without looking back. He put his hand flat on the glass. Then he took his jacket and went to find the council. He didn't need to find them. Pole was in the corridor outside his workspace, which he had been expecting. The council had been watching his movements since day 3, and the completion of 41 pages was probably visible to them in ways he hadn't fully mapped. Pole had the prepared quality reinstalled, the rationed name quality, the quality of something waiting for a specific outcome, and arranged to receive it. "The council is ready to receive your report," Pole said. "Good," Clover said, "I'm ready to give it." They walked. The council chamber looked the same as it had when he'd stood in front of 7 old certainties and refused their offer. The altitude, the windows, the city spread out behind the curved table as argument. The same 7 figures arranged in the same formation. He crossed the open floor. He did not sit. He reached into his jacket and took out the 41 pages and placed them on the table in front of Vane. She looked at them, at the handwriting, the paper, the physical fact of a document produced by hand in a city that hadn't needed handwriting in several generations. "My report," Clover said. Vane looked up at him. "You've concluded the investigation." "Yes. And your findings?" "Are in the report," he said, "all of them in full." She looked at the pages again, picked up the top sheet. Read the first lines. He watched her face as she read, the half-beat delay, the located expression, and then something underneath the located expression that was happening without permission. She put the sheet down. "Mr. Clover," she said. "I know what you're going to say," he said. "You're going to tell me the report is broader than the scope of the investigation, that it covers matters outside the specific question of who killed Aldous and by what means, that portions of it constitute interference in administrative matters that are properly within the council's jurisdiction." "Yes," she said. "All of that is true," he said. "The report covers who killed Aldous and by what means in the first 9 pages. The remaining 32 pages cover why and what it means and the full context of the murder and the full record of what I found in this city while investigating it." He looked along the row of faces, including Appendix C, including the workforce extraction projections, including what I found in the maintenance room in Building 7, Sub-Level 2, Lower Administrative District. He paused. "Including the courtyard in the blocks with the painted walls, including the baby born 3 weeks ago whose name is Raven." The chamber was very still. Prell leaned forward. "The council cannot formally receive a document of this scope as an investigative report. The council can receive it as whatever it chooses," Clover said, "or it can refuse it, Put it in a drawer, seal it, lose it in the administrative infrastructure somewhere. He looked at Prell. I've made a copy. A pause. Several copies, he said. On the same paper in the same handwriting in locations I'm not going to specify, because paper has a way of surviving, because things written down in enough places tend to find their way to people who need to read them eventually in whatever year in whatever version of a city. He paused. I've spent my career watching that happen. I have some faith in the process. The compact councillor at the end of the table, the one who cut to the transactional, said quietly, "What is it that you want, Mr. Clover, from this, ultimately?" He looked at the compact councillor. "The vote," he said, "the demolition, I want it cancelled, not suspended, cancelled." "The council cannot." "The council can do what it decides to do," Clover said. "It's been doing that for centuries. It decided to wall the blocks. It decided to write Appendix C. It decided to issue a kill order the morning after I told it not to." He looked at Vane. "It can decide to cancel a vote." Vane was looking at the pages, at the 41 pages of handwritten accounts sitting on the curved table in front of her. "The report names Raven," she said. "Yes." Explicitly, as the person who killed Aldous. "Yes. That is," she stopped. "Given that she has deactivated herself, the naming is." "The truth," Clover said. "She told me herself, in full, she wanted it in the record. She wanted the whole story in the record, not just the act but the reason, not just the murder but the policy it was trying to stop." He paused. She was a lawyer. She believed in the full account. Vane was quiet. "She also asked me to include the courtyard," Clover said. "The painted walls in the blocks. She said it should be in the record." He looked at the 7 faces. "It's on page 37, read it." Nobody spoke. He looked at the city and the windows behind them, the towers and the bridges and the boulevard and the decided sky. The 200,000 uploaded consciousnesses going about the administrative morning in their fine and frictionless ways. The wall in the middle distance, 8 meters of concrete, dividing the city from itself. "You built something extraordinary," he said. "I've said that before and I mean it. The engineering, the infrastructure, the scale of what you've maintained here for centuries, it's genuinely remarkable." He paused. "And then you put 40,000 people behind a wall and wrote 400 pages about how to disappear them. And somewhere in the middle of all that, a woman who had been a human rights lawyer spent 7 years trying to stop it through every legitimate channel you provided. And when the channels ran out, she stopped the person who was going to make it happen, and then she sat at her window and chose to stop existing because she missed having a body." He looked at them steadily. "That's the story, all of it, it's in the 41 pages. He turned. He walked across the open floor toward the door. "Mr. Clover," Vane's voice. He stopped, didn't turn. "The vote," she said, "the restructuring initiative." A long pause. "The council will review its position." He stood at the door. "Will review its position." The clean language again, the language that said the necessary minimum. But it was different from what she'd said before. Before she had said the system couldn't act on his report. Before she had said one report from an outside investigator didn't move it. Now she was saying the council would review. It wasn't a cancellation. It wasn't nothing either. "Page 37, he said again. "Read it." He walked out. He went to the blocks. He went through the gate in the early administrative morning, and the gate figures let him through, and he walked to Marin's table where the market was beginning its daily becoming, and Marin was already fully operational, and looked at him with the steady eyes that had been running their assessment since the first day, and had long since completed it. He sat on the edge of the table structure. "I gave them the report," he said. "And the council will review its position on the vote." Marin looked at him. "That's not a cancellation." "No," he said. "But it's not nothing." "No," he said, "it's not nothing." She was quiet for a moment, arranging things on the table, the small work that hands did. "One day at a time," she said. "Yes," he said. She reached under the table and put something in front of him. A cup of the not coffee, hot, the flavor from its particular part of the botanical world. He held it with both hands. "What happens to you now?" Marin said. He thought about that, about the world on the other side of the wall, the white rooms and the sourced light and the research chairs. The 200,000 uploaded consciousnesses going about their permanent lives, the council reviewing its position. the copies of 41 pages distributed in locations he wasn't going to specify. He thought about the box, about what demonstrated societal need meant, whether the council could put him back in it and whether they would, and whether they had already decided to. "I don't know," he said. Maren looked at him with the steady eyes. "You could stay," she said, "here in the blocks." She said it with the directness she applied to everything, not an offer exactly, more like a fact presented for his consideration. "We could use someone who asks the right questions." He looked at the market, at the people moving through it in the morning's particular way, the woman with the bags already in motion, the old man who had pressed his hand yesterday moving through on some early errand, the children navigating between adults with their own urgent business. Seb at the far edge, sharp-eyed, tracking the morning. A baby somewhere, sleeping, named for someone she would come to know through the people who loved her. A courtyard 2 streets over with painted walls. He thought about what Raven had said, "Coming here helps. These people are temporary and they know it, and it's in everything they do." He thought about being temporary, about the specific value of it, the thing the flesh knew that the mind didn't know it knew until it was gone. He was still fleshy. Still temporary. Still here. "I'll think about it," he said. Maren picked up the cup from in front of him, refilled it from the vessel, put it back. "Think fast," she said. "We have a water outlet on the north block that's been slow for a month." He looked at the cup. "I'm a detective," he said, "not a plumber." Raven was a lawyer, Maren said. She fixed it anyway. He sat with that. The market filled around him. The administrative morning became itself. The light was the same as it always was in touring, sourceless even without the particular quality of early. But here in the blocks it felt different. Not the light itself, the light didn't know the difference, but the things the light fell on. The patched buildings, the mismatched curtains, the laundry on the line, the faces. After a while he became aware that something was moving through the market. Not a rumor exactly, not news, something quieter and more fundamental, the way a feeling moved through a space, person to person, without needing to be spoken. He watched it. A woman stopped at Maren's table for her morning transaction, and said something to Maren that he didn't catch, and Maren nodded. And the woman moved on, and her face had something in it that it hadn't had when she arrived. An older man passed with a child on his shoulders and said the name to someone he passed. Not loudly, just said it, the name, the way you said something true, and the person he said it to repeated it back. Seb at the far edge of the market, talking to 2 other children, and one of the children said the name and Seb said it back, and then they all said it together. 3 children in the morning light saying a name like they were checking that it still worked. Raven. He sat at the edge of Maren's table and held his cup of not coffee in both hands and listened to the name move through the market, the way water moved through the block's improvised pipes, finding its path, reaching everything, the infrastructure that mattered, carrying what needed to be carried. Maren watched him listen to it. "It started last night," she said quietly. "After people found out, the children especially, they started saying it." She paused, like they were making sure it didn't go anywhere. He thought about what Maren had told him. A name that belongs to something worth remembering belongs to the future too. He thought about a baby sleeping in a room somewhere in the blocks, not knowing anything yet, carrying the name forward into whatever came next. He thought about the council reviewing its position, about 41 pages in several locations, waiting, about the full account existing in the record, the true things said in enough places to survive. He thought about Vex's walls, about the thoughts that had needed somewhere to go, about what it meant to write things down even when the official record didn't want them, even when the system couldn't act on them, even when the city was very old and very settled, and change was slow and uncertain and arrived, when it arrived, in increments too small to see until you looked back. He thought about a woman in a grey coat who had run out of legitimate channels and found another way and then chosen her ending at her own window, looking out at a city she had tried to change. Her purpose will live long after her. He believed that. He believed it the way he believed things he'd verified, through evidence, through observation, through the specific methodology of a man who looked at things until he understood them. The evidence was in the market around him, in the name moving from person to person like water finding its path, in a beetle on a wall, in 41 pages, in a baby sleeping. in a slow water outlet on the north block that had been waiting a month for someone to look at it. He finished the not coffee. He put the cup on the table. He looked at Marin's. North block, he said, show me the outlet. Marin looked at him with the steady eyes. Something in them that was not quite a smile and was better than one, the expression of someone whose assessment had finally returned its verdict. She came out from behind her table. This way, she said. He followed her into the blocks, past the market and into the streets beyond it, past the buildings particular and patched, past the courtyard he knew was 2 turns to the left, through the noise and the smell and the full volume life of 40,000 people living in the available space. The light fell on everything the same as it always had. But here it meant something different. Here it fell on things that were temporary, and the temporariness was the point. And the point was that it mattered because it was going to end. And it was going to end because that was what flesh knew, what bodies knew. What the blocks knew in their bones and their borrowed blankets and their improvised pipes and their painted walls. He walked through it. He was still here. He was still temporary. He was, for the first time in a very long time, in a time he couldn't even fully calculate, across a gap of centuries, through a box and a white room and a murder and a city of the permanent dead and a woman who had chosen her own ending at her own window. He was, for the first time, not looking for the next place to be. He was here. In the blocks. In the light. Following a woman with extraordinary judgment toward a water outlet that needed looking at. Behind him in the market, a child said a name. Then another. Then another. The crack in Turing spread. And